Welcome to Shh, Tell Me Everything. Hello, everyone, and welcome today to today's episode of Shh, Tell Me Everything. I am Kristy Pack, the host, and I'm so excited to be joined in my studio today with my dear friend, Liz Sears, who I know as the rock star realtor in my life, but she is so much more than that. She has served as a major business mentor for me in everything from, mentality, outlook to systems to teams. I mean, this woman is so brilliant in so many ways and has probably read more business books than maybe anybody I know, except for maybe John Hoyman, because he does like 7 a week. So we can't top him. But Liz is absolutely fantastic at what she does. She's also a master negotiator. She's so good and skilled in her field. And we'll give her a little bit of time at the end of our episode today to tell us a little bit more about how to find her. But I'm really excited to have Liz today. She's actually one of the very first people that popped into my mind as I was thinking of this podcast. And what we want you to do today, Liz, because I know there are truly so many things we would have you teach us because you have a plethora
You
of
are too
knowledge that you
nice.
have
Like
earned. No,
all of
it's
this,
true.
I'm like,
It is,
no, no.
it's totally true. So there's so many things, but I've asked Liz to pick just one to share with us today one something that has made all of the difference. And with this, I gave her, in whatever field you want. It can be in business, it could be in work, it could be in life, it could be in when you're baking a cake. I don't know. What is
Yeah.
this one secret that you have learned that makes all the difference? And we are so grateful to have you here, Liz, to just share with us and teach us. So Liz, tell us everything.
If I had to boil it down to just one thing, there's a lot of pieces that kind of got me to the point where I am with this, but I would say walk in like a giant. And the way to walk in like a giant is when you're entering a conversation, a negotiation, a room to network, is you walk in absolutely 100% claiming your space, your right to be there, your confidence, all of that. And the coolest thing about walking in like a giant is that suddenly it doesn't need to be about you at all. It's you're walking in not needing anybody to make you feel welcome, not needing somebody to say hi, not needing somebody to give you permission to do what you're there to do. And instead, you just care about the other people who are in the room and how you're going to achieve your goals while caring about how they experience you. And there's times when you got to put yourself first, and there's times when you got to put other people first. And learning that learning all the different pieces that kind of came together with that is what I would say got me to that point. And so, Christy, you and I were talking, and I would love to share kind of like the first story of what really got me
I was gonna say
claiming.
how? Because you say that all like it's a very simple thing. Like, you're just gonna walk in like a giant and it's all gonna be fine. But like that's actually
Yeah,
quite a concept, you know what I mean? To not only
yeah.
get your brain around, but to really embody and be able to live and do. So I would love to hear the how. Like, how did you come to this? Like, what is your story with it?
Honestly, the first time was when I first got into business. I went to this workshop and they said, "Okay, come up with your goal. What's your goal?" And they said, "Have it be a stretch goal, something that you don't even think you could achieve." And so I wrote down the goal and they said, "Okay, now double it." And the logic that they gave, I think all of us have heard, is that if you aim for the stars and you don't quite hit there, you'll probably go farther than you would have if you had only aimed for like the top of the building or whatever you want to say. And what I found was that it completely discouraged me. It made me feel like I could never reach my goals, so I might as well just do the best I can today, right? You've
Yeah.
been there,
You're
you
like,
can feel it.
okay, I'll double it. I write that number down and
Okay,
now what?
yeah.
Yeah.
Now what? Yeah. And so then one time I was doing my New Year's resolutions. It was the beginning of 2016. And as I sat down to just kind of reevaluate what's the trajectory of my life? What do I want to accomplish? How do I want to grow as a person? All of the things I'd done in the past just felt like someone else's dream, stuff that
Hmm.
somebody had told me ought to be what I shoot for. And the logic behind it made sense. But then I thought, what if I just scrap everything and I just go total selfish? That's kind of how it felt in the moment, and define what's success to me. And I just started writing out a bunch of stuff. And it was silly things like, well, not silly, but I want to be the one who gets my kids ready for school and sends them out the door. I want to be the one there for the first 10 minutes when they get home because that's all they want me for, anyways, just say hi, give them a hug, give them
Uh-huh.
a snack, and be done. Like I wanted to be present for those times. I wanted to participate in activities at their school because when I wrote this, all of my kids were little. And then I started thinking about if my life were perfect, if I could describe exactly what perfection looks like, what would it be? And I went through like my relationships with all the core people, including my kids. I went through finances. I went through my career. I went through my environment. What does my car look like? How is the cleanliness level of it? What's my house? What's my yard? How do I recreate? How do I spend my time to go play? Things like that. And after I finished writing out and describing what perfect looks like to me, it was a story and I liked it a lot. So I'm like, okay, that's what I want to strive for. So that was the first one. And then about a year and a half later, I'm at this real estate conference, and Lori Brunson was being interviewed up on stage. And she tells a story about how she would find herself in circumstances where she felt inferior. She felt self conscious. She felt out of her league, intimidated, all of those things. And what she realized is that that was not serving her at all. And so she came up with this mantra that when she found herself in those circumstances, she would say, I don't play in that playground anymore, and she would just own it. And it would help her just kind of snap out of it because it all boils back to mindset.
Mhm.
Every person you meet in life is superior to you in one way, which means that there's reason to be humble and to be respectful. And every single person you meet in your life is inferior to you in some way, which means you have total right to feel confidence. And so when you can couple those two things together, the way that you engage with other people elevates. And so the whole "I don't play in that playground anymore" was a mantra that I adopted, and I started using it really well, and then a year and a half later after that, it was 2019, or yeah, I think it's 2019, um, this woman calls me and says, "Hey, I'm new to real estate. Got my real estate license, and I was trying to figure out how to do it better and told that I should join a team, and your team came up." And I was thinking, that's funny because, like, really my team is just me and my assistant, and then we've contracted out for transaction coordinating, stuff like that. And so she and I talked, we had an awesome conversation, really got to know each other well. And at the end of it, she was debating between my team and this other team. And I said, "They're set up better for you. They have the training, the structure, the everything you want, and I really think you should go with them." And she said, "Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, let's do that." And we ended the call. She was really grateful for my time and such. And then she walks in the next day to our office. She's freaking stunning, like, so gorgeous that I was like, boom, instantly back to my mindset as a kid, when you're around people where you're like, "They're cooler than me, more popular than me,
Like the
cute,
cool girl just
prettier,"
walked
all
in.
this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, right, yeah. And so, all of a sudden, I was so uncomfortable, and I started having these emotions like, "Who am I to give advice?" She's better than me, and what am I thinking? I'm so out of my league and stuff. And she walks in and she says, "Hi, it's so good to meet you in person," gives me this hug and says, "Thanks so much." And then she goes to the office next door. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. Like, what the heck is going on? I'm a grown adult woman. Like, why would I click into this old mindset? And then I thought, oh, yeah, I don't play in that playground anymore. And I sat there and I'm like, I don't play in that playground anymore. Then I'm like, I don't play in that playground anymore. And of course, I'm not technically saying this out loud. I probably
But
was, but
kind
I was
of,
really
yeah.
quiet about it so no one could hear me. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and just all of a sudden, like, my skin tingled, and I just, like, felt this switch flip. And all of a sudden, I'm, like, back into my empowerment. I'm like, "I wanna anchor this. I really wanna anchor this." So I purposely walked out of my office into the one next door where she was, and I said, "Hey, I just wanted to congratulate you again about your decision and let you know if you ever have questions, I'd love to be here for you, so feel free to reach out." She's like, "Oh, thanks. I really appreciate it." And I went back into my office thinking, she has no idea the emotional, like, process that I just went through. And those 3 things together really kinda clicked for me of just, what does it mean to stand in my strength? What does it mean to set my own goals? What does it mean to be me, not somebody that someone else told me to be? And so in kind of growing through that and opening up my own brokerage and engaging with people that aren't the people I normally do, because there's so many different varieties of people, that you engage with, and the ones you're most comfortable with are the ones you're drawn to. And when you find yourself in circumstances with people that aren't what you're familiar with, it can easily click you back into take a step back, be more of an observer, even though that may not help me get my goals. So that was kind of like when you told me what was the one thing, I'm like, that's what it is. It's choosing to walk in like a giant every circumstance I get and really owning the responsibility of it.
Do you
So,
find that you still have to, stop and tell yourself that sometimes when you're walking into rooms, or is it a lot
oh,
more natural
all the
now?
time.
Yeah.
It's more natural than it used to be, and it's easier to embrace that perspective, but human nature is human nature. You wanna fit in, you wanna be liked, and all those things, and how to transcend, I don't know if necessarily is the right phrase for it, but just to let go of that natural need that is false, because 'cause
Mhm.
you're always gonna find your people, and especially when you stop thinking about yourself and you think more about, "Yeah, I know my goals, I'm gonna purposely strive towards my goals so it's not someone else's responsibility to get me there, it's mine, and while I'm doing this, pay attention to other people." And how can I enrich their lives? How can I make them better? And those 2 things together, I often think, what if everyone in the world took full ownership of the direction of their life and paid attention to how others experience them? It'd be really cool.
It'd be very different, right? It'd be so different.
Yeah.
I like when you said to yourself, "This thought isn't serving me." And the thing that came to my mind when you said that was, I didn't say this thought isn't true. It wasn't like
Yeah.
when you feel like this lady's really out of my league, or this is, like, oh man, she's now up here and I'm down here. Like, saying it doesn't serve me is different than saying, "Hey, that's not true." Because almost like I don't have the mental capacity right now to even battle whether that's true or not, or,
Yeah.
like, where we are, but to skip that out of my mind and say, "I'm not gonna worry about whether or not that thought is even true or right or wrong or accurate, doesn't matter. Does it
Yeah.
serve me? It's not
Right.
serving me." So, like, okay, so I don't even need to worry about, is that true or not? Nope, doesn't matter. Like, it's not serving me.
Yeah.
I don't play in that playground anymore. That's
And, you know
powerful.
yeah, and as you were describing that, another phrase came to my mind is I'm starting to reject the premise of certain questions. Like when a question is posed to me, a lot of times the question has an underlying true or false to it when both answers are false. But
Like
because of the
what?
way
Like,
the question,
give me an example.
uh, is she prettier than me? You know,
Oh.
or anything like that is it's all in the eye of the beholder anyways. And so the question
Mhm.
itself is a fallacy.
Mhm.
And there's times when somebody will confront us with something like even inside of business, it's gotta be option A or option B, and you're like, "Well, neither of those serve me, therefore the premise of the question is wrong." And so then the question would be, what other options exist? Rather than, do you choose A or B? And so a lot of times that's what, has helped me too with my mindset is because I will have a reaction to a scenario like, "Oh my gosh, that girl is so rude," or that other agent has been so belligerent. And I will treat that reaction as though it's truth. And then I'll decide how do I respond to that fake truth. When really, what if that person is so rude, what they did was so out of line, or it's unethical, whatever my reaction might be to it. What if I step back and say, why did they behave like that? What pieces of data is going on in their life, or what circumstances, maybe is a better way to say it, that might have caused them to behave like that? And so getting a little bit more granular can help me not respond to a reaction, but create the end result I want. So even letting go of the questions to begin with and just say, okay, what am I dealing with here? I'm dealing
Mhm.
with the fact that I want my client, for example, inside of work to get this house. The other agent is not communicating well, and when they do, they're very rude and such. And say, well, my end goal is I want my client to love this experience. I want them to get the house. I want it to be terms that work for them. So therefore, how this agent acted is irrelevant. How can I take what's occurred to get to the result that I want? So I guess that would be another thing with the whole of walking in like a giant. Sometimes you have to, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I always say her long wrong when I get those
Right.
2. I read this yeah, yeah. I read this thing about her where she said some advice she got when she was first married served her very well on the Supreme Court, which is sometimes it pays to be a little deaf. And it means that just because something occurred doesn't mean it needs to be addressed, resolved, discussed, confronted, all that stuff. Sometimes it pays to be a little deaf. So in circumstances where somebody shows up where they're heading down a path to a result that doesn't align with what I'm trying to achieve, sometimes it pays to be a little deaf.
Well, that strikes me too as like a real mark of maturity, or like what I would define as mature, right? Because the thing
Yeah.
that comes to my mind is my cute 9-year-old girl who is awesome, and a 9-year-old girl, and just you can tell, just like, wants can't wants to push all the things and doesn't wanna let go of any injustice, whether it's over who
Uh-huh.
had the fork first or I mean, it's just like, it does not matter, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
not being able to let go of anything. It's all like
That was so
it's
me as a kid.
reactionary, right? It's
Yeah.
I'm reacting, but it's
Mhm.
fair. I can't let go of it, even if it means I'm gonna burn the house. Well, she's not gonna burn the house down, but, like, you
Yeah.
could take everything away, wouldn't matter because of that one thing, and so she couldn't let go of it no matter what the
Mhm.
consequence was, instead of looking at what do you actually want out of the
Yeah.
situation, which she's 9, she's learning, right? But, like, you see that
Right.
maturity that, like, man, I hope to mature beyond that to be able to not just react. Oh, man, I get stuck in reaction, though. Like, I think that's
Oh, it's
pretty
so human
normal.
nature, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
and we've also made habits of it, and, bad habits die hard or strong habits die hard, whatever
yeah,
it is, and so the habit of reacting and treating it as truth and a need for fairness and a need for things to be made right
mhm,
is something that I had a big problem with growing up, and I think I was relatively kind almost all the time with it because I wanted that too, but there were so many times when something would feel like it wasn't done right, and it would just almost like this I don't even know what the term would be, but I had to make it right. So as you're describing her with the fork, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I've totally been there."
like
And
yeah.
yeah. So how do you reframe it, you know? And that's
When I
just
said I
kind of
was
a life lesson.
so this was, like, yesterday, like, I was trying to teach, I was because I could see in my mind,
Mhm.
"Hey, do not throw away your trip to Disneyland this month because you're
Yeah.
throwing such a fit over the fork. Like, is the fork worth it?" Like, that's very I can pick that apart, but she can't. So I was
Yeah.
trying to teach how to let go of the one thing, but I didn't found
Yeah.
myself not even having the words. It's like, I intrinsically understand it looking at you and your problem, but I didn't have even the right words to say to her, I was like, "Knock it
Yeah.
off." Like, well, that's not, that's not as deep as I'm trying to go. But I heard what did I hear? The true intelligent one day, and this is something that has stuck with me for years. I mean, not this the idea of it, right? I can't remember the exact words, but like
Yeah.
the true intelligence, like really smart people are able to move the pieces to get what they want. Now,
Mm.
that could be used like very negatively, obviously, right? Like, but really like if you're really intelligent, you can move the pieces to get what you want. And it's sometimes there is that sacrifice of I'm going to be death for a second or I'm not going to get exactly
Mhm.
what I want right now because what do I really want? What's the real
Right.
outcome? I want my client to get this house under the best terms. Okay, well, to
And
do
to love
that
the experience. Yeah.
and to love the experience, and to do that, then I need to then take these steps, even though this person's being awful and does not deserve me to act this way. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I
Well,
should I
actually,
yeah.
there's one piece in there that I'd actually change, and this is the power of words. I've been really studying and paying attention to the power of words, and that's been mind-blowing to me. Even just the way of wording things of, "In order to get that outcome, I need to do this," versus in order to get the outcome I want, I choose to do
Mm,
this.
mhm.
And even just that teeny little bit will actually change the air of it. And so I love to give this example a lot of times to my agents when I'm training, but it could even be, I'm sure we could find a parallel for children of if two agents walk in to interview for the job of listing a home and they both have taken the exact same training and they deliver the same pre-listing packet. They say the same words, they ask the same questions, they guide the same way, they negotiate the same way, they practically give identical presentations. And one of them is, "Oh my gosh, I need this so bad. Please, 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 please hire me. I need it so bad. How am I gonna pay my mortgage next month?" And there's just like this emotion behind it. And the other one is, "I know I'm one of the best people for the job. I know I can get this home sold. I know it's gonna be phenomenal. I'll take the listing if I choose to, if I think that it fits with what I want." Hands down, the client's gonna choose which one, the
Yeah,
one with
the
the
one that knows.
underlying confidence.
Mhm.
And so if you think somebody's wrong as you're engaging with them, no matter what words you use, no matter how good you do it, no matter all of that stuff, they're gonna feel that you're judging them as wrong. And if instead we have an air of curiosity, like, "Why do you need to make it
Mhm.
right with the fork? Help me understand that." Then the conversation will be different. And then the other piece, oh, it came to mind 3 times and now it's gone. It'll come to me in just 1 minute. It almost came back and then it left again. So
Well, what you're saying too, like, so this reminds me of some things that I learned this weekend. So this weekend I went to the Equality Utah Gala. I was invited by a friend, which I've never really been involved with the organization before. And we're not here to talk
Yeah.
politics or any of that, but it was you can learn such good things where you go, right? And the
Yeah.
executive director was telling a story. And they're a lobbying group primarily for the LGBT community in Utah to on Capitol Hill. Their goal is to ensure equal rights. So this is what they do, right? They raise funds and they lobby. And he was, but they in their mission, part of it, they're trying to do it through changing hearts and changing minds by building bridges and relationships, not just,
Mhm.
you know, everybody's wrong, the kind of
Yeah.
rhetoric. But, he said that he often has to pull up a chair to a table that he wasn't invited to and make friends. And
Mhm.
in doing that, that's how they're able to work towards their agenda. That's how they're able to accomplish their goals, even though they could say, "Oh, well, I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to, like I could. This person's a so and so, or whatever." But like
Yeah.
they can see that for their goals, the better
Mhm.
way of actually getting to their goals is to pull up a chair to that table that I wasn't even invited to and make a friend.
Yeah.
And now I have a voice. And yes, I should have a voice anyway. But if I want to get my voice heard, this is how I'm going to move the pieces to get there. And that's something that really stuck out at me because I feel like a lot of times, like I usually don't lack confidence, but it's like, fine, if you don't want me there, I don't have to be there. Or like, if you know what I mean, like I
Mhm.
want to do the things that I'm really good at, and I'm of course less excited to do things that I'm not as good at or that I'm not going to be the
Right.
expert at. But that example
Yep.
of could I could I sit at a table even if I wasn't invited? You know what I mean? I'm gonna pull up to, like, metaphorically, I'm gonna
Mhm.
pull up to that group because that's where how did you say this? This is where I want to be, right, to get the outcome that I
Mhm.
want, not just what I need to do, this is what I
Yes.
want to do. And so I'm gonna have that grit and bravery, whatever you wanna call it, that I'm gonna pull up to that table, sit at a table that I wasn't invited to, and truly make a friend, not just pretend, but actually trying to
Right.
see the humanity and the good in these other people that maybe have opposing views, but that's how I'm going to learn and understand and have any hope of persuading, because otherwise no one's gonna
Yeah.
listen anyway when we're trying to persuade.
Well, you said you didn't wanna talk politics, but
I know.
actually, I think the segue and the piece that you just mentioned is kind of the key to everything that we're dealing with right now as a nation.
Yeah,
And what I mean by that is the ability to have civil debate, the
yes.
ability to make friends with
Yeah.
people who may not think the same way we do. And the way that we do that is by having that perspective also of they're inferior to me in ways and superior to me in ways. And so therefore being humble and being confident at the same time and respectful. And as we treat ourselves, treat others, everybody with respect, we can have these hard conversations that the skill set of having hard conversations is kind of gone right now.
Mhm,
We went through generations
mhm.
of don't talk politics, don't talk religion. And in doing so, we lost the skill set to do it.
Isn't
And
that
I think it's
isn't
sad.
isn't it true? Because now it's everybody's so afraid to say anything or because it's kind of all or nothing. So I loved the idea too, and I heard this too at a women's panel with some different women candidates that were or elected officials and talking about how they're dealing with opposition. They were from all different both different parties, but how to deal with it. And one woman was very, very inspirational to me. And she said, I really do try to find things that I like about the person. And not,
Mhm.
and again, and I'm not kidding, like really, like, and that helps me soften. And I am always listening with an ear of, "You might be right," and maybe you're
Yeah,
not, but if I can listen with the ear of, "You might be right," or there might be something right about what you're saying, instead of
yeah,
just, "Nope, it is all or nothing, and it's either this camp or it's that camp, and you either
yeah,
agree with me or you hate me, and there's no room in between for what if I could really like some wonderful things about you and still strongly disagree with how you would like this policy to be written for our
right.
community and government."
Oh
Like,
my gosh,
can
that
we
would
not
be
talk
amazing,
about those things? Yeah.
and be
Like,
able to say, "Just because I don't like your policy doesn't mean I hate you."
oh
And
my gosh, Liz,
and to
it's been
really
so
stand by our
yeah.
the policies that we stand behind and why we stand behind them, and be able to articulate the logic of, like, if I could give one piece of political advice here, I would
Please
love the
do.
opportunity. That's alright?
I've changed my mind. Yes, please.
So I I think that you should always expect to have some part of the platform of the political party that you stand for violate your core beliefs, and therefore you do not support it. And you should be able to find something from the opposing political party or
Yeah.
parties that you do agree with and you support those policies.
And you should be
Because
terribly alarmed if you don't, right? Like,
yes, because then you're treating it like a religion. You're treating
Mhm.
anything that comes from those political leaders as though they are your prophet, and you
Yeah.
have to agree with them because it came out of their mouth.
And you have to agree with everything. I think that oftentimes, like,
That's so scary.
like,
Don't
how
do
I
that.
can't even my best friend, we're not gonna agree on more than 10 things, let alone a list of 1,000 things that we're somehow magically all supposed to feel exactly the same about, or I don't
That's
fit there, you know what I
ridiculous.
mean? Like, it's ridiculous,
Yeah.
yeah, like,
And I
I got
remember somebody telling me they weren't gonna vote for one candidate because of this one aspect of that person, and even though everything else about that person they really liked, and I thought, that's like buying a house because you like the mudroom, and you're not even taking into consideration the kitchen, the family room, and the
yeah,
foundation, like, look at the whole thing. So this is the advice I'd give, is that regardless of which party wins in November, you can still make a difference with the
mhm,
policies of your leaders heading to Washington to vote in Congress and such. And so one of the things that I just recently learned and I wish everybody would do is if that elected official doesn't have time to read the bill, they should vote no. Because there's bills getting passed that have stuff in it that are not what we as constituents would want. But because of the now kind of the routine, the structure, the tradition of how they
mhm,
put forth bills,
mhm.
is that they make them too big to read. They don't split them up into smaller ones that you can debate individually and approve part and decline the rest.
Which
They put
seems
them all into
bonkers.
one.
Can you imagine trying to, like, apply for a loan for a house or something, and you're lumping everything in together and wouldn't allow each thing to be scrutinized? You know, that you'd say,
Yeah, it's
like,
insane.
it's bonkers. Bonkers.
Bonkers. These omnibus spending bills didn't used to be structured as one big giant thing that includes stuff that we don't agree with in it. You were able to debate them. So tell your elected officials, we expect you to vote no if you haven't had a chance to thoroughly vet it according to what you promised us. That's one. The other thing is on policies in particular, write to your candidates. And this is what you should look at. What's the policy that they're passing? What's the cost of that policy? Like, man hours, relationships with other, countries, whatever it may be, money, obviously, costs. What do they intend to get with this? Because you wanna see if the cost is valid of what's their intended result and what are the unintended results that are probably gonna happen based on history. And if you consider those 4 things, does this create a result that I want to leave for my children to deal with? Because a lot of the policies that are passing right now don't leave a result that you want your children to have to deal with. And if we could look at individual policies, especially with the presidential, I don't know if this is going to come out before the presidential election, but if it does, like, look at the individual policies. And if there's one policy in particular that you just have your heart set on and it's a do or die for the candidate, consider the fact that you're talking about buying a house based on the master bedroom bathroom or the master bathroom, whatever you want to call it. That's illogical and it may not leave the best country for your children. So look at each and every single policy. And then even just locally with that, like, we've made some really good strides with creating more affordable housing for purchase, which is what's going to strengthen and grow the middle class. And people who are for it or against it, I just think look at the different pieces and what it's going to leave. The best way to kill the culture that you say you want to retain, the best way to kill it is to price your own children and the next generation out and make them all move away. And
Yeah.
so that's why having affordable housing to purchase is so important.
Well, if I could just, oh my gosh, my wish for the whole world is, could we have that little table of those 4 things for every policy? Like, would they just put whatever, I don't
Right?
care who you are as a
Oh my
candidate, will you
gosh.
just fill out 4 boxes for us on each one and actually explain
Yeah.
those things to help us be able to make it clear? And it's not, of course, right? It just comes
Yeah.
back to you're a good person or you're a bad person depending on the lens, and that
Oh my
defines the
goodness.
party that
Yeah.
you're in. You know what I mean? Like, either way, like, these people think they're crazy, these people think they're crazy, and we're not even actually talking about policies and those boxes of what
And a
I see
lot
as like
of
the grid, you know
times
what I mean?
you'll ask them to give you information about the policies, and instead of giving you the factual data of this cost, this intended result, this law, this legislation, they'll say generalizations about emotions.
Yes,
And I'm like,
which
that
which
says
then, of course,
nothing.
well, that says nothing, and there's no accountability with that, and this is my beef against politics in general is, ugh, like, I just want, just tell me the answer and let me say if I agree with it or
Right.
not, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
stop all the
Oh,
emotion and pushing it to this, like, what's the plan? Because I see it kinda like as a business owner, like, you'd have to have a good plan for this, like, we wouldn't do any of
yeah.
these things based on just emotion, unless then maybe it's a party, but then it's my money and I can spend it, and so that's fine, but, like, I'm not spending somebody else's money based on emotion, you know, like,
Right, yeah, and it kinda comes back to that whole, premise comment, is like when their logic for passing the bill is based on emotion,
Yeah.
and the emotion is a positive emotion, then they want you to say, vote for the bill because this positive emotion is good. And if you vote against it, it means that you want the opposite of that
Well, it's
positive
yeah,
emotion.
total
Well,
false choice. Total
yeah,
false choice, right? Like,
reject the premise.
yeah.
That's, yeah, completely.
Yeah. Well, because
So,
then everybody's backed into a corner because if you're a good person, you're gonna vote this way. And again, that same voice from both sides. Well, if you were a good
yes,
person, this is how you'd vote. Well,
yes.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
Nope.
well then
I
well,
just I wanna
right.
know what's the policy, what's the cost, what's the
Uh-huh.
result you want. Yep, exactly.
Well, we need to have a whole other conversations, more and more
Oh my
conversations
gosh,
about
I
this.
would
And
love
well,
it.
and that was helpful too. Like I went to this event. I was like, man, we need more leaders who are willing to have the dialogue and to really
Mhm.
have it. To really look at negotiating and explaining and talking about things and you know what I mean, take the emotion out. Like
Yes.
leaders of for any party that embrace that would be something that I would support. I actually got a lot of flack because I have a friend who's running for a Senate seat in our state, and she
Mhm.
asked if she could put a sign up. I said, "Yeah, you can put a sign up." And I got a bunch of flack from people because she's not traditionally the party that I vote for, and I actually got, like, phone calls, like, it was very interesting when I tried to tell people, I was like, "Listen, like, I want more good candidates to run. If we
Yeah.
had more good people now, I'm not saying I agree with all the things, but I want more good people to run who are real leaders. If we can get more real
Yeah.
good leaders in the mix, then hopefully we
Mhm.
can elevate the whole conversation of things. It just made me laugh though, because it was so emotional for them that I let her put a sign up. And I was like, oh, but I absolutely want her to run. I want all
Yeah.
people who are good to throw their hat in the ring and to go run.
Oh
But
my gosh, right?
it just made me
Yes.
laugh. Like, even on this very local level, of like, "Oh my gosh, people, like, let's have a
That's
dialogue.
awesome.
Let's be able to tolerate it," right? It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable to talk with
Mhm.
people about things that they disagree with you about because there's some confrontation there, and maybe you don't have the best arguments, and maybe they're gonna bulldoze over you, but that's a discomfort we need to tolerate if we want an evolved
Mhm.
society, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's also an invitation if, you don't wanna have the conversation because you think you'll get bulldozed over, is to, get a little bit more educated. It's
Yeah.
surprising to me how many people are comfortable not doing their part for learning what's going on with the candidates, even if all you
Yeah.
do is say, "I'm just gonna spend 10 minutes and I'm gonna read each platform." And this is especially for local as well, they have
Especially
it
for
on
local.
there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I I had it pop up. It took me less than 30 minutes to go through the platforms of all the different people, and then I was like, "I agree with this, I don't agree with that." And I was able to make an educated decision. That's why it's so important to go to their pages and read their platforms and not just watch it and say, "Do I feel good about this person?"
Right.
That
Because
scares me
that's
when somebody's like, "I just feel in my gut, I feel good about this person." Well, they could be a good person, but the platform they stand on isn't one that will
no.
pass on what you wanna pass on to your kids.
What it's just again, I really like what you said, like, you should be scared if you agree with absolutely everything of any group,
Yep.
really, because you are treating it like religion, like, "Whoa," like, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't
Yep.
be afraid to maintain your own thoughts and your own ideas within a
Yep.
framework of a group that generally represents what I want, but
Yeah. And to
this
even
all or nothing mentality is just
yeah.
bonkers.
And to take it a step even higher than don't be afraid to, is I would say, don't abdicate your responsibility.
Hmm,
It's your
mhm.
responsibility to your children and the children of your good friends. If you don't have any of your own children, you have good friends who have children. It's your responsibility to do what you can to make sure it's good. So
Well, I'm
don't
riled up,
abdicate.
and
I
people
know, right?
go register
Yeah.
to vote. If you've not registered to vote, please go register to vote and go, like,
Yes,
actually learn
please.
about your candidates, especially at the local level, like, the power to move things in your community is at the local level, like, this is where
Yep.
there's actually the biggest chance of being able to implement any kind of changes you wanna see is at the local level, like, please go find out who your candidates are, find out some more.
Yes.
We really should have, like, a whole separate section of this whole thing. We could go for days.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh. I would love to.
I was like, "Oh, no, we're
Yeah.
just getting started on this. Alright, here we go." Okay. Okay, this is what we'll do. Liz, I wanna turn the last, like, minute or 2 over to you. I'm just gonna turn my mic off. I want to turn the time over to you to share whatever it is that you wanna share. If you wanna take this time to pitch a little bit about yourself or your business, that's great. Just leave us with some final thoughts, and then we'll close out.
All right. Perfect. Thanks. What I would love to say to everyone is just own who you are. Love the goals that you have in your life, love the people in your life, recognize the power of the relationships that you're able to create with those who are most important to you. And as you prioritize that you have the right and responsibility to live your life to its fullest, and as you pay attention to the way other people experience you, then that is going to create a life that you get to enjoy more than once. And that's what I define success as. Is when you get to enjoy your life more than once, it's because you view your life as you're the hero. You're the one who gets to show up and be the one who overcomes hard times, who figures out a way to make it work, who makes the alliances and the friendships with those that inspire you the best. And do you get it right every time? No, because any movie that gets it right every time is boring. And so that's what I mean by enjoying it more than once, is not just when you're living it, but when you get to tell the stories and the things you went through and how you overcame hard times and how you just made it fun. And that also helps me a lot of times when I just pretend there's a camera in the corner and I want to like kind of lose my shiz, is be like, how much am I going to enjoy this later? Like, how do I really want to show up? And so that would be the advice that I give to everybody. And if you ever want to check me out online or anything like that, my company is utahseliterealtors.com. And I'm on Facebook as Liz Sears and on Instagram as listwithliz.biz. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to an episode of Shh, Tell Me Everything. This podcast is proudly hosted by PackTax and produced by Techne Innovations. We drop new episodes 4 times a month, so be sure to subscribe and never miss out. See you next time, and keep those secrets coming.